Speaking of keynotes, I am here to introduce our final keynote, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Carrie Robinson. She has worked tirelessly to help strengthen church institutions and to cultivate lay leadership for women and men. She's the founding executive director and global ambassador of the Leadership Roundtable. She's been an advisor to and trustee of numerous grant-making foundations, family philanthropies, and charitable nonprofits since 1990. She's a member of the Raskob Foundation for Catholic Activities and foundations and donors interested in Catholic activities, or FADICA. She served as the Director of Development for St. Thomas More Catholic Chapel and Center at Yale University. This is impressive. There she led a $75 million fundraising drive to expand and endow the chapel's intellectual and spiritual ministry and to construct a Catholic student center on Yale's campus. She is the prize-winning author of Imagining Abundance, Fundraising, Philanthropy, and a Spiritual Call to Service, and also a columnist for Chicago Catholic. Please join me in a warm welcome to Carrie Robinson to deliver her address, Women, Leadership, Decision-Making, and the Church.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Arlene, and members of the Planning Committee for such gracious, thoughtful hospitality. Thank you, wise, informed, faith-filled, and dedicated women and some men for devoting this weekend to be here. Thank you for your witness, your faith, your scholarship, your leadership, and your active engagement. I have been overjoyed to be with so many friends, colleagues, and personal heroes. Your leadership, often in very challenging circumstances, is inspiring and personally ennobling. This gathering has been good for my soul. I have truly enjoyed every conversation, every presentation, every drink at the bar, every prayer. I'm so grateful to all of you for the myriad leadership roles that you represent and for the skill and dedication you bring to your leadership and for the way you point us toward a church to which we yearn to belong. For as long as I have been aware, I have passionately loved the Catholic Church and membership in it, and I've held its potential in the highest esteem. Its explicitly religious mission has formed the woman that I am, that it is the largest humanitarian network in the world renders me forever committed to its health and vitality. Now, this is neither blind love nor infatuation, but love born of time and gratitude and prayer. The more I am engaged in the life of the church, the more I become aware of its history, its mission, its myriad ministries, and its potential. I am aware and in awe of the role women have played in the life of the church, beginning with that moment in time when all of Christianity rested on the faithful, courageous witness of one woman, Mary Magdalene. The church has ennobled me and at times broken my heart. My whole adult life, from the age of 14, has been dedicated to serving and strengthening the church. I first fell in love with the church because of my exposure to it at a very young age through the Raskob Foundation for Catholic Activities. 5 generations of our family have served the church through the instrument of this foundation. What this means is 75 years ago, our great-grandparents, Helena and John Raskob, established the Philanthropic Foundation with 2 intentions. They wanted all of the foundation's resources to be used exclusively to support the church, and they wanted their children and descendants to be stewards of the foundation's resources. All participation is voluntary. No one is paid for this. It is non-remunerative. But we understand this invitation to be a serious commitment of time, focus, and engagement in the life of the church. Today, there are close to 100 direct descendants of Helena and John actively engaged in the work of the Raskob Foundation. We're spread across the country. It has been an uncommon privilege to serve the church in this way with the unanticipated beneficial consequence of evangelization for our family. Part of the reason so many members of our family are Catholic and remain Catholic is because we have a family culture that prizes entrusting the youngest adult members of our family with meaningful leadership in the foundation. Parenthetically, it is worth noting that when the foundation was established, it was made clear that if any child or descendant discerned a vocation to the priesthood and became ordained, that family member would be excluded from the foundation. 75 years ago, this deeply Catholic family had that insight. As a child, I was drawn to women role models like you, women whose faith mattered deeply to them, women who had dedicated their lives to ministry and pastoral care and education and social justice. I observed that while these childhood heroines often bore witness to the worst of what humankind does to one another and to our planet, there was a palpable sense of joy about them. Their lives were imbued with purpose and meaning. I so admired their faith, their freedom, and their joy. My friend, Sister Simone Campbell, might recognize this as holy mischief. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like you. At the Raskob Foundation, we have also seen tremendous challenges over 75 years facing the church, and have been brought up to believe that we have an obligation to help solve those challenges, regardless of how difficult or seemingly insurmountable they may be. Difficult never means impossible. These are not easy days to be Catholic. These are not easy years to be Catholic as we confront the crisis of clergy sexual abuse and fractured trust, replete with clericalism, sexism, and poor stewardship. I firmly believe, however, as Joan and Cecilia and Susanna and Kim have all said in the plenary sessions, that women hold the key to positive managerial reform, the restoration of trust in the church and in church leadership, and that now is precisely the time when the church needs women more than ever. The best advice I can offer in times of anguish, when the institutional church fails to live up to its potential or manifests ignoble qualities, clericalism, arrogance, fear, secrecy, sanctimony, prejudice, sexism, or mediocrity, comes from my teacher and spiritual director, a beloved sister of mercy, Margaret Farley. She said, "Remember what it is you most love about the church and membership in it. Name what you love. Claim what you love. It will provide ballast to allow you to navigate with fidelity and focus when you are disappointed and discouraged." I have taken this advice to heart and highly recommend the discipline. Have you thought about this? When people ask you why you are Catholic or why you stay, what do you tell them? What do you most love and value about our faith? My list is long and wide. I love our church's rich intellectual tradition, social justice teaching, sacramental life and imagination, mercy, the Eucharist, how welcoming we are to babies, forgiveness, the preferential option for the poor and most vulnerable, prayer and transcendence, the primacy of conscience, the injunction to be Christ-like. I love that wherever there is human suffering in this world, the church is at the vanguard of providing relief, promoting justice, and advocating for peace. I am daily grateful for Pope Francis, the people's Pope, the world's Pope. I love that he has given us Laudato Si, and despite obstacles and challenges, some inexplicably heartbreaking and gratuitous, it provides people of goodwill a seminal roadmap to care for our common home and one another. Recently, I lost my closest friend and colleague of more than 20 years, a Catholic priest, Bob Boulogne. I am grateful more than I can say for our church's articulation of the communion of saints, the conviction of eternal life, the fact that love doesn't end in death. I'm reminded of Monsignor Gino Walsh's famous injunction: followers of Jesus are promised two things. Your life will have meaning and you will live forever. If you get a better offer, take it. I submit that there are as many personally held and valued reasons why one loves the church, despite all of its flaws, as there are members of the church. Be clear often about what it is you most love and value, for that will sustain you in times of challenge and difficulty. My best answer at its heart is simple. I love the church, have dedicated my life vocationally to serving the church, and will never give up on the church because of one thing: you. And women all over the world of all ages like you. You are a reason for hope. My hope and the hope of all who know you. Never underestimate that. My involvement with our Families Foundation led me to meet other families similarly interested in supporting the church. In order to be better informed about the needs of the church and in order to provide opportunities to collaborate on funding, we formed a consortium called FADICA, Foundations and Donors Interested in Catholic Activities. Two of my lifetime beloved friends, co-conspirators, and FADICA colleagues are here, Betty Ann Donnelly and Andrea Hattler-Bramson. I learn every day from them and their example. By the way, Betty Ann Donnelly is the creator and preacher coordinator for the outstanding resource known as Catholic Women Preach. She is working closely with Russ Petras, who is also here this weekend on Catholic Women Preach. Make sure to sign up on their website and prepare to be dazzled. And Andrea Hattler-Bramson has been a philanthropic and energetic supporter of both this Women of the Church conference and its inaugural one in Ferdinand, and I owe her a debt of gratitude for that. Betty Ann, Andrea, and I, along with other women colleagues in Catholic philanthropy, at the invitation in 2007 of Chantal Gertz, have had the rare privilege to meet privately with cardinals all over the world, but especially in Rome. The purpose of our meetings with the cardinals in Rome is specific in its simplicity: to discuss the role of women in the church and opportunities to elevate women to positions of meaningful leadership throughout the church and in the Roman Curia. And it has been a delight to meet Susanna, who was so eloquent on the panel yesterday and who now works at Voices of Faith. My women colleagues with whom I go to Rome to advocate for women are professional women who care deeply about the church and represent families with decades of service to the global church. We have studied theology at the master's and doctoral levels, immersed ourselves in ecclesiology and canon law, raised our children in our faith, and dedicated our lives to serving the church philanthropically. And because we are radically dedicated to helping the church thrive, we pay particular attention when the church fails to live up to its potential or manifests ignoble qualities, arrogance, clericalism, or poor management. When these qualities fracture trust, alienate people hungry for the gospel, compromise sacramental life, and result disproportionately in women and young adults turning away from the church, we are heartbroken and angry for such poor stewardship. In our meetings with Vatican officials, we have been impassioned advocates for women religious. Over the decades of our collective families philanthropy, it is women religious who have been center stage as part of the most compelling, courageous, and effective ministries globally. Promoting, celebrating, and expressing gratitude for their lives, leadership, and example is right and just. And in a show of remarkable solidarity, as we spoke to women religious to better prepare for our trips to Rome, we were told over and over again that they would be holding us in prayer and would send out word to the members of their religious communities to hold us in prayer. We felt the strength of that prayer chain. Our thesis in every discussion with the cardinals in Rome is this: when a young Catholic woman, especially from the West, looks at the landscape of her professional life, she knows she can reach the highest levels of leadership in any sector or industry. But when that same woman discerns a vocation of service to the church she loves, she is more often met with limitations on her leadership. She finds she cannot bring her full complement of competencies to bear on serving the church. So she turns her attention instead to the secular world, where she can excel, be promoted, be appreciated, lead, and serve fully. The church becomes less and less relevant to her, and by extension becomes increasingly less relevant to her children, both boys and girls. Without these highly talented, accomplished women, the whole church is impoverished. Data reveals the beneficial impact of including women along with men at the highest levels of leadership across all sectors. Corporations with women on their boards have a better return for shareholders. Female doctors are less likely to be sued for malpractice. Universities, the military, the judiciary, government, all are strengthened by the presence of women in leadership and decision-making positions. All three recent popes have lamented the absence of more women in the Roman Curia. The Synod on Young Adults just last year raised up the role of women. The final document endorses the need for greater decision-making roles for women in the church and says, quote, "Young people have asked for a greater recognition and appreciation of women in society and in the church. Many women play an irreplaceable role in Christian communities, but in many places it is a struggle to give them a place in decision-making processes. The absence of women's voice and point of view impoverishes the discussion and journey of the church and removes a precious contribution from discernment. The Synod recommended to make everyone more aware of the urgency of a necessary and inevitable change," end quote. Do young women find many role models at the highest levels of leadership in the church? Are there examples in the lectionary where women are the protagonists? Why have so many examples been left out? Are there visible signs that women are included in decision-making within the church? How welcoming are we as a church to young women and their talents and abilities? How dare we risk losing them? Young adults matter deeply to me, as does the role of mentoring, and I recommend that for the rest of our lives, we both continue to seek out mentors and agree enthusiastically to mentor young adults. I have a section in here on a program called Esteem that I'm going to just briefly describe to you and can talk to you after the talk, or if you ever want to contact me, but just in the interest of time. Esteem is a national young adult leadership formation program that was designed to stem the exodus of the brightest young adults who have a positive experience of the church while on campus because they are blessed enough to go to St. Mary's College, or they attend a university with a great Newman Center. And what we're finding is that these Catholics love the church in that setting, and then when they graduate, move to their first city, they hopefully check out their neighborhood parish, but they find it stultifying, and very few of their peers are there. There's not a lot of attention on young adults, and they tend to give up. And all of my life I have heard, don't worry about this, Carrie, it's just the age. They'll come back when they get married, have a child, or experience a devastating life crisis. And finally I said, this is not a good strategic plan. so we created this program that is basically designed for campus ministers. And I'm looking at you, Megan. And campus ministers can identify from the students, the best and brightest, the most committed, the ones destined for leadership. And then they're treated to this year-long curriculum that just gives them the basics of ecclesiology. What is a diocese? What's a parish pastoral council? What are the opportunities for all of us, lay, ordained, and religious, to serve the church? And commissions them to be young adult leaders in their 20s. Our vision is that the whole church would reposition itself to be welcoming to at least 2 young adults on every board, from St. Mary's College to the local soup kitchen to every committee at the USCCB. We repopulate it with these well-formed young adults, and everyone benefits. Responding to the sexual abuse crisis and advocating for the role of lay leadership, and frankly, especially women in the church, has been a central component of my work on behalf of the church all of my adult life. In 1995, I was in my 20s, one of these young adults, and a newly elected trustee of the Raskob Foundation for Catholic Activities. We had been asked to provide $500,000 in the form of a grant to an archdiocese to help settle lawsuits and provide counseling for victim survivors. Now, depending on your viewpoint then or now, I was either naive or prescient. I wanted to deny the grant and help the Archbishop sell property to make recompense to the victim survivors and be fully transparent about what had happened. Fast forward to 2002, 17 years ago, our church was engulfed in the clergy sexual abuse crisis. At the time, I served as Director of Development for St. Thomas More, the Catholic Chapel and Center at Yale University. It was the most profound experience of lay clergy collaboration that I have ever had. I worked in genuine partnership for 10 years with my wonderful friend and colleague, Father Bob Beloin. He died of glioblastoma 1 year ago. A major point of emphasis in our effort to raise money for Catholic campus ministry was the elevation of Catholic intellectual life on campus. Proudly, we revealed to alumni and prospective donors that we were elevating and celebrating Catholic intellectual discourse, taking the topics of the day, illuminating them from the perspective of faith, and inviting students into a rich discussion and debate about the relevance of faith. Halfway through the campaign, the topic of the day was the Catholic Church's sexual abuse crisis. Nothing in our lifetime was more damaging, discrediting, heartbreaking, or shocking about the church than these revelations. It would have been tempting to admit our lack of culpability in the crisis and do nothing. Tempting, but not faithful. We knew that to do nothing is to be complicit. Instead, we hosted a 3-day conference entitled Governance, Accountability, and the Future of the Catholic Church to examine the underlying conditions that may have contributed to the crisis with a view to making a meaningful and positive contribution to our church. That conference was held in March of 2003. We hosted over 500 people, 30 nationally recognized speakers. The subject matter was wrenching, and yet everyone left hopeful. We all belonged to the church. This was our church. Listening to victim survivors was the first step. Understanding the problems at hand was the second. Committing to being part of the solution was the third. Acting on that commitment was the fourth step and have been our steps ever since. Participants left with the sense that it was possible, even if very difficult, to help call the church to greater levels of accountability and holiness. We could all play a role in making a positive contribution, and clearly the laity had much to offer, particularly in the areas of management of human and financial resources, contemporary best practices, and solutions to complex temporal challenges facing church leaders. 3 months later, I met Jeff Boise, who delivered an impeccable keynote on the same theme with remarkably consistent conclusions and with the same heartfelt motivation. Jeff wanted to help our church overcome what he understood as a leadership and management crisis. I was spellbound by his presentation, the content, the delivery, and the respect he commanded by his presence, leadership, and obvious dedication. The best of Vatican II is personified in the women and men who joined Jeff in serving as founding trustees of Leadership Roundtable. Women like Kathleen McChesney, the first person to direct the Office of Child Protection at the USCCB, and who continues to this day to advocate for child safety in the church. Women like Sister Carol Kean, Time Magazine's most powerful person in healthcare, former CEO of Catholic Health Association. When their church was in crisis, they did everything possible to effect healing and reconciliation, exercising baptismal responsibility, not only taking their faith to make the world better, but taking their faith to make our church better. They founded the Leadership Roundtable. It was a grand experiment that had never been tried anywhere in the world before this moment. And it is a comprehensive example of stewardship on the part of all of the baptized to care well for what has been entrusted to the church and to recognize the enormous potential before us. This is a network of senior leaders from all walks of life, all of whom are Catholic and committed. They value the church and want it to be strengthened. They yearn to contribute to the restoration of trust that has been so painfully shattered by the abuse crisis. And they want to help usher in a new culture predicated on ethics, transparency, accountability, and excellence. Frankly, they want a church worthy of their children and grandchildren, and this really keeps them up at night. It is now 2019, and I serve as the global ambassador of Leadership Roundtable to bring our resources to benefit the global church. Now we are embroiled in a new wave of crisis, one that is not unique to the US, but global in nature. Yesterday, Cecilia gave us such a beautiful and powerful reflection, which can help our own imaginations, a reflection of the situation before us, both the devastation and the new life to come through our action, our poder. These crises have eroded the moral authority of the church in the public square, affected the ability of the church to evangelize, destroyed the credibility of church leadership in the eyes of many, and driven over a generation of Catholics from our faith. Just a side note, I've been deeply interested in assessing what is different about 2018, or our current time, from 2002, when the revelations first reached the consciousness of most Americans. And I'd really be interested in your thoughts on that. Here are some observations. We now have an entirely new generation of young adults hearing the graphic details for the first time. And yet this same generation has only ever known the church while it's been in crisis. There is a cumulative effect of frustration, anger, shame, sorrow, and horror on the part of so many priests, women religious, deacons, and laity of integrity, like so many in this room, who have been working on solutions for decades. The external culture and the impact of the Me Too movement has to be a factor. If movie moguls, politicians, and CEOs finally no longer get a pass, why should we expect faith leaders to? And perhaps most specifically, the sense that church leaders, especially bishops, were not held accountable for their failures of commission and omission in the handling of this crisis. So what are we to do? What is the meaning in this for us? Why do we care? Where is love in the answer to our why, as Cecilia encouraged us to ask? We are not giving up, but working diligently to respond and to be part of the solution. At Leadership Roundtable, we advocate that victim survivors be a central part of all deliberations, solutions, and plans. This is the minimum of what justice demands. Along with survivors, lay leadership is essential. Laity with a specific, exceptional managerial expertise and experience, with financial acumen, lay women and men of integrity and exemplary character and reputation. Restoring Catholics' trust requires cultural change. It takes time. And this cultural change is based on transparency, accountability, competency, and justice. When our son and daughter were little, my husband and I told them that if we ever got separated in a park, at a museum, in any public space, they should look immediately for a mother with young children and go to her because she would keep them safe and know how to reunite us as quickly as possible. I didn't tell them to look for a cop or a priest. I'm haunted by the question, where were the women at the tables of decision-making when the crisis broke in 1987, 2002, or 2018? And how different would things have looked if mothers, parents, had been included in leadership and decision-making? Let me be very clear. It is not that women are better than men or that parents are more judicious than those without children. It's that diversity matters. Who is at the table of decision-making matters. We all need to solve for myopia. We are all myopic on our own or within our own narrowly defined groups. We only know what we know. We need the diversity of perspectives and experiences to be healthy and whole and wiser and more prudent, which is why women's leadership together with men matters, and no solution moving forward will be complete without the presence and authority of women. In troubled days of prayer about the crisis, about how to ensure we are all an effective part of the solution, I asked a close friend of mine, how does one replenish the reservoir of hope and dedication and faith in the midst of shame and anguish of the unfolding crisis? We could pose the same question as we see young adults and women leaving our church. My friend's response was wise. Pray with the image of the women standing by the cross. Pray with the image of the women giving witness to the resurrection. Scripture describes it as their fear giving way to a mounting sense of joy. We are nothing if not a Paschal people. Deep within the Catholic imagination is the conviction that out of suffering and death comes new life. And we, the women gathered today, we are called to be bearers of this good news. We can affect change, lead by example to change the culture, stand witness to the new life to come, and be the interpreters of the signs of that new life for which we all yearn. I offer you a challenge in the spirit of this new life. Let us be bearers of good news, witnesses to new life. Help to give faithful, articulate, prophetic voice to the importance of baptismal rights and responsibilities. Be part of the global transformation of consciousness that celebrates, invites, affirms, and encourages the genuine collaboration of laity, religious, and clergy in service to the church's mission. This is surely one reason we are here gathered this weekend. Let us be bold, think big, trust in providence, exercise faith-filled imagination, live in the world of possibility. And let us be joyful. My classmate at Yale Divinity School once remarked that she visited a parish for Mass that was painfully stultifying and lackluster, bordering on morose, prompting her to speak to the pastor afterwards. She said, "Father, I know that this is the holy sacrifice of the Mass, but you are not the one being sacrificed." Joy is a hallmark of the Christian life and faith. How do we, in our ministry and vocation and daily lives, cultivate joy? We would do well to be aware, pay attention, be present. Remember that we cannot protect ourselves from sorrow without also protecting ourselves from joy. Let us pray for the grace to cultivate merciful hearts. Let us encounter and accompany people who are different than us, in far greater need than us. Allow our hearts to break by this beautiful world and common humanity. In vulnerability, we find joy. Let us act on hope. Live out of an abundance model, because Christ came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. Bridge the chasm between the left and the right in our church and in our country. Silence the vitriol. avoid cynicism. A cynic, this is my favorite definition of a cynic is, after all, simply one who has given up but not yet shut up. Here are a few life maxims that I have found to be helpful guideposts. The man who says it cannot be done should not interrupt the woman doing it. Diversity matters. The more diverse, the better the discussion and decisions. Everyone has a piece of the wisdom. Celebrate joyfully what is right in order to find the energy to fix what is wrong. Surround yourself with people who ennoble your spirit. Gatherings like this are good for the soul. God's voice is always the voice of encouragement, never discouragement. Be the reason for someone's hope each day. And remember the Christian mandate to do all things in love. So to recap, the Catholic Church is the largest global humanitarian network with enormous potential and therefore responsibility to address human suffering and complex global challenges. It is also the vehicle through which the Catholic faith is transmitted to nearly 1.3 billion people. Sui generis with a divine mission, the Church is distinct from secular institutions. Nevertheless, it is comprised of people, facilities, property, and finances, which deserve to be handled with the highest levels of ethics, care, accountability, and best managerial practices. That level of care should be commensurate with the degree to which its mission is deemed important, urgent, beneficial, and salvific. Deep within the Catholic imagination, if not universally applied in practice, is Imago Dei, the conviction that all people are created in God's likeness. All forms of prejudice and discrimination are contrary to Catholic teaching. This faith claim alone argues for the full participation, value, and equal respect for women as for men. Decades of substantive Catholic social teaching have brought inviolable insight into how Catholics and people of goodwill ought to comport and conduct ourselves. An especially important assertion is the preferential option for the poor. Those of us most in need, most marginalized, and most vulnerable deserve the particular attention, care, and advocacy of those of us to whom much has been given. It bears noting that women and children are disproportionately adversely affected by poverty, war, climate change, illness, unemployment, and forced migration, and least likely to cause or contribute to such deleterious conditions. The Church is embroiled in a particular set of crises: clergy sexual abuse and concomitant leadership failures. Better analysis of root causes, more effective solutions, and a commitment to positive cultural change is best achieved when women are included at the tables of decision-making. This is true in every sector and context. The Church needs the insightful, prophetic, experience, perspective, voice, and contribution of women now more than ever. Add to this the growing disaffection of young adults and young women in particular with the Church. Young women deserve role models and clear understandings that their service to the Church will not be met with gratuitous limitations on the exercise of their full complement of gifts and talents as they live out their vocation. For those who value the Church's mission and vitality, its impact as a global humanitarian network, and the restoration of trust in Church leadership, concern about the role of women is a matter of managerial and moral urgency. How compromised is the Church by failing to include women at the highest levels of leadership and at the tables of decision-making in the Roman Curia and throughout the institutional Church? Nearly every institution in the world has accommodated and incorporated women in leadership, often reluctantly at first, only to admit the practical, tangible value of having done so. Recruiting competent women to positions of leadership and increasing the percentage of women serving in such roles to approximate that of men is crucial. In the U.S., there are increasingly inspiring examples of women serving in senior diocesan positions and serving as CEOs of national Catholic apostolates. Many are present with us here today. I'm looking at you, Donna. Do we have as many women as men serving on pastoral councils, diocesan finance councils, and boards of trustees of Catholic charities? If not, why not? What informs the reluctance to appoint women as pastoral life coordinators overseeing parishes, given the very serious priest shortage? What informs the reluctance to extend the vote to women religious participating in the synods? How long must we wait for women to be restored to the diaconate? What impact does the insistence that authority, leadership, and decision-making be solely tied to ordination have on the presence, participation, and active engagement of women in the church? We can help the church emulate what it advocates. We can provide a strong signal to young women that women are valued in leadership by ensuring that they are invisibly so. We can work toward better human resource policies and structures that take seriously lay vocations. How do we identify, recruit, form, train, place, compensate, evaluate, and promote women in the church? Do we invest in their formation? Do we use our collective creativity, will, and determination to find ways to reduce or forgive their student debt? We can reimagine seminary formation to ensure that it is conducive to healthy lay clergy collaboration and co-responsibility. We can insist that a candidate's ability to work collaboratively and effectively and respectfully with women be a requirement in the selection and appointment of bishops. We can establish effective mentoring programs for young Catholic women. We can seek out mentors and serve as mentors over the whole course of our lives. And we can expand our imagination and appoint women to the diplomatic corps, communication apostolates, and the prefectures and presidencies of dicasteries. Women are essential to the future of a vibrant church. In closing, as Joan urged us on Friday night, let's change the narrative, raise up our sisters, our histories, and our stories. Let's be the church we yearn to see, a more relevant church to young adults, a more joyful church, a church of integrity, ethics, trust, justice, welcoming, and openness, a safe environment for the most vulnerable, a church worthy of profound generosity, a church that is at the forefront of justice, peace, and charity, a church that avails itself of the talents of all of its members, acknowledges the gifts and competencies of women, and utilizes those talents, a church that properly cares for all that has been entrusted to it and responds courageously and confidently to the potential at hand, a church the world needs, because the world needs solace, healing, peace, hope, mercy, generosity, and the light and love of Christ. As we actively participate in this work, standing on the shoulders of truly inspiring women who have gone before us, as we draw strength from their past to provide hope for the future, let our prayer be, God, keep us close to you and to each other. Thank you.